cat. I want to see Jerry Burns on the zip line. It's my dream of my life now.
I want to get the audio. How about you, Ted?
Super Bowl, homeboy.
Yeah!
Super Bowl, absolutely.
Super Bowl or bust. Miami or bust.
Good morning, Gjallarhorn. The old men are back. It's me, Dave, Drew, and Ted.
Good to be back.
All right. Ted, how are you doing now that we know Drew's going through a COPD fit? Needs to go probably call an ambulance.
If I was doing any better, I'd be against the law. How are you guys?
That's well put. Doing okay. When's the season start? How many days?
70, what?
4. 74 days.
Now, is that the start of the NFL season?
No, that's the start of our season. The other teams don't matter, so the NFL doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the Minnesota Vikings. That's the only thing that matters. And we are, as of today, 74 Bryant McKinney days away from kickoff.
Well, that's when we record. When this comes out, can you do the math?
Well, I don't know how many days till it comes out.
Well, by the time you render this and publish it, it'll be like 12 days before the season starts.
Well, there's a specific target date of July 8th, and you will be seeing why July 8th means something to all of us.
I can't figure that out. That's too much math for this late at time. So.
But speaking of other teams that don't count,
none of them count.
What did you think of the story about that team from Wisconsin and their efforts to get their players to get along and bond?
You know, honestly, the first thing I thought of, do you remember back in it would have been the late 80s, I believe it was, with the Vikings, when they had all that talent on the team and they never went more than 10-6 or 11-5, and they checked out of the first round of the playoffs. And I think it was GM Mike Lynn, or it might have been Roger Hedrick, the guy that took over after him.
Oh, my God. I haven't heard that name in so long.
Do you remember? And he took them all to like some team building thing out in the Grand Canyon. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And it was like supposed to bring the team together and everything else, and it just failed miserably. I don't even know if they went to the playoffs the next year. And all I can think of is like, you imagine Jerry Burns getting ready to do like a zip line across the canyon. F this, F that, F this, F that. Zip line this. You can't force. You cannot force a unit to be cohesive. You can't. They either get along or they don't get along. And if
Jerry Burns on a zip line.
just start counting the F-bombs.
And if they can't get along, but at least they respect each other, you can sort of have a bit of unit cohesion that way if you have really good leadership. I don't know that the Packers have good leadership. I honestly think with a new coach, I think they are in for a very bad season. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams aside.
Well, who was that dude on NFL Network, I think it was, that was previewing the teams, the divisions team by team? He had us going 5-11, and he had the Packers like 12-4.
Adam Rank.
Adam Rank. I was wondering, what kind of drugs is he doing?
The Packers, as long as they have Aaron Rodgers, are going to be media darlings. They just are.
Always have been.
I mean, they were, they were on the verge of leaving Wisconsin because they had to play half their home games in Milwaukee until Favre showed up. And now for the past 25 years, whatever it was, they've had Hall of Fame quarterback play. When Rodgers retires, unless another Hall of Fame quarterback, which I highly doubt, they're just going to be another team.
Like that, what was it, about 2-decade gap between Bart Starr and Brett Favre?
Yeah, for 20 years, they were a terrible, terrible franchise.
Yeah,
we used to 70s and 80s.
Work them like a $2 Sacramento whore in the 70s. They were no match. We were licking tits weekly on them. If you have to go out and do bonding things and purposely have to go out and zip line and stuff, that means you don't have it to begin with. That stuff all comes naturally. I mean, you got guys meeting up for a barbecue or going bowling. It's not a planned thing. Then that's when you really got it going together. If you purposely have to make these ventures out, then you don't have it to begin with. You're trying to get it.
And when your highest paid player and your biggest star, which happens to be your quarterback, which is by default the natural leadership position on a football team, if he's the guy that's causing or is the root or part of the problem, then it makes it that much more difficult for a team to come together. I mean, he's already thrown LaFleur under the bus.
Yeah, and the season hasn't even come close to starting.
So I don't know. I think
I don't see a lot of strengths on that team. When I look at the NFC North and break it down roster by roster, I see a lot of young players on that team, but it's not what it was. It's not at all to me. I mean, what do they got at wideout? They got one guy, you know, and their quarterback is no spring chicken. So
no, he's Joe Flacco. Stats wise, over the last couple of years, 2-3 years.
Wow,
Flacco Stein.
That'll get people fired up.
Well, that's the stats he's putting out. Yeah, everybody thinks Aaron Rodgers is great, and yeah, he has had talent, and he plays some good football. But when it comes down to how you can produce and whether you produce winners and win games and such, the last couple of years, nope.
I think that running back they had, Aaron Jones, can be good. Mike McCarthy did an amazing job of neutralizing him as soon as he started being effective by taking him out of the game for long stretches of the time.
That was a head scratcher. That was a head scratcher.
I mean, if Matt LaFleur has any common sense, he'll make Aaron Jones his workhorse back and just kind of see where that goes. I think I think Jones, Rodgers, and Devontae Adams can be a pretty good three-headed monster for Green Bay. I'm still not really sold on their offensive line, and their defense is still.
Yeah, but that's if they gel as a team.
True.
But
yeah.
right now, we're not seeing that.
That's
which is great. I hope we don't.
If who's going to step up for the Packers if Devontae Adams gets another concussion? Equimania St. Virgin Island Brown or whatever the dude's name is. Come on, man.
Well, the separation for me really comes when I look within the division. The separation for me really comes with the defenses. And the Bears and the Vikings, to me, defensively, are head and shoulders above the Lions and that team from Wisconsin.
I absolutely agree.
There's a big separation there. And I think that defense does still matter.
It does.
But the team from Wisconsin has no depth. And so I don't know. I still think we're sitting on paper I hate saying that because that's such a shitty thing because it always backfires. You take all those turnovers away that the Bears got, we're probably the division winners. So, and they're not going to get those again.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to be plus 422 in turnover margin like they were last year. Right. And their defensive guru was going. I mean, if Mike Zimmer left, yeah, it'd be a head coaching change, but he's essentially their defensive coordinator too. Mm-hmm. You look what he did with essentially the same defense from 2013 when they were statistically one of the worst defenses in the NFL to like a top 15 defense in his first year. You can't tell me coaching doesn't matter in the NFL. Coaching is the difference between 5-11 and 11-5. I really firmly believe that.
Absolutely.
And Vic Fangio, the Bears defense is still going to be very good, but it's going to drop off. They're not going to have that turnover margin like they had last year, like you
That's a
mentioned.
good
Drew.
point. They lost Fangio. The team from Wisconsin is new coaching staff all the way around. Detroit's got Patricia, who just stares off into space. So, coaching-wise, we have a strong.
Don't slouch.
Respect the process.
we have probably the most solid coaching staff. Now, that being said, we're bringing in a new scheme offensively.
Is it though? I mean, Stefanski.
I don't know.
Is it?
Well, to me, it's Kubiak's the offensive coordinator. I don't really know what Stefanski's supposed to be doing. But
I'm not so sure about that, especially what's come out lately.
I'm not worried about shit. We got a kicking coach, so we're going to win it all.
Damn straight. You got that right. No, but what's coming out lately about Kubiak is his role is being more and more revealed.
What's his role, David? Give us his role, Zipline King.
Well, we originally thought it was going to be head coach offense, right? Because Zimmer loves his defense, loves the guys on his defense, everything about his defense. He studies offenses all summer long on how to defeat them, how his defense can beat them, right? Everything's defense. As far as offense, he hates offense and he hates kickers, right? So what did he do?
The offense? That's what it's.
So what did he do this offseason? He hired Greg Kubiak, right? Who's Kubiak,
right?
Coach Kubiak, who and the whole Denver Mafia, right? To come in and take the whole responsibility of offense off his shoulders, right? He can say, whoop, that's yours, right? I don't have to worry about it. I have to worry about defense, right? And he also hired Nick Keating to be the kickers coach so he can say, I don't have to worry about the kicker anymore. I hate kickers. He's all yours, right?
Is that official? I thought it was just like he's officially their kicking coach. I thought that was like a
he's
part-time experiment thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Dan Bailey must be psyched. Dan Bailey hits 25 field goals in a row. It's the kicking coach's fault. Dan Bailey misses 25 field goals. Well, he'll be gone by then. Then he didn't listen to the kicking coach. So Dan Bailey's basically out. He doesn't have a leg to stand on anymore.
But I think it will actually help. But we've had this.
Hey, what can it hurt? We're not paying for it. Let him have 10 kicking coaches.
Exactly. But Kubiak and I get my sources listening to Skull North mostly, but also reading all across the web and etc. When it turns out, everybody was thinking this is Kubiak's offense, and that he was basically hired. Stefanski was named OC, and then Kubiak was hired, and it was all right. Stefanski, you're OC in name only, but it's going to be Kubiak's deal. Well, it turns out that Stefanski is calling the plays and setting up the offense, and he's drawing from all his experience back to Childress on forward, all the different types of offenses that he's seen run, and he's making a Vikings offense, right, to fulfill Zimmer's wishes to run more play action pass, etc. But he's also being influenced by Kubiak as to what works and what doesn't, and how to set up this offense to be a zone running and how to make it work. And he's doing that. But the whole idea of, rather than Kubiak being the one actually calling the plays and directing shit from on high or from 30 yards behind the line of scrimmage, is that Kubiak is the sounding board for Zimmer. They're peers.
He will be calling the plays after Stefanski gets fired.
And they bounce back and forth. One of the first questions supposedly Zimmer asked him is, how do you deal with expectations? Because every time the Vikings had a good year, the next year there was tons of expectations, right? Hey, they're going to be a Super Bowl team. They're going deep into the playoffs, right? And what they do, they shit themselves, right? Whether it be in 2016 or last year in 2018. And the whole idea of how did you deal with these expectations, because Kubiak had the same ones, that is helping. It's the bouncing back and forth of those two, Zimmer and Kubiak, that are making for a more well-rounded approach to allow Stefanski to set up the offense he wants, right, within Zimmer's parameters, while Zimmer still maintains the majority control of the defense.
Dave, how long have I known you? Since when?
Jesus.
2000,
2004?
2,
Here it
4,
comes.
somewhere
Wait,
in there.
I'm not going to like this next statement.
You're one of my best friends. But that I can't get on board with. I can't. Okay. So she's a sounding board. So
That all sounded good, Dave. Dave, that was a hell of a job.
It was. You really laid it on thick. I'll give you that. you, my friend, laid it on thick. But we have no idea how it's going to work. I personally think I'm going to take the flip side of the argument and think if you have too many cooks, you spoil the broth. I mean, so Kubiak's what, a co-offensive coach, offensive
head coach offense is the easiest way to put it.
So and Stefanski's the offensive coordinator, and I don't know. I mean, it just Stefanski's the fall guy is what he is.
What? Then I need to know who's gonna be the fall guy.
He is the fall guy.
He's have the fall guy with you. Stefanski's the fall guy.
Yeah, he is the fall guy. Did he meet with Stefanski in the offseason, Zimmer, and say, it seemed like Kubiak was hired because Zimmer doesn't trust Stefanski or he's not experienced enough as a coordinator. And maybe, I don't know if he sat him down and went, do you think you can handle this job on your own? If not, we're going to get Gary Kubiak in here to kind of oversee the whole thing. Because if that was the case, then Stefanski was the one who voted for it, so he's not going to have a problem with it because could that have been how the conversation went? He didn't just come into Stefanski's office one day and say, "Hey, we're getting Kubiak. Deal with it." I don't know.
Everything I've read, and whether it's true or not, who knows? It could be all propaganda. Is that Stefanski lobbied for Gary Kubiak?
And I read this and heard that same thing.
So he lobbied to be the scapegoat.
Look. Some people know their roles. Maybe he knows he's born to be a fall guy.
You know what, Ted? If this offense goes to shit and we're 1-5, Kubiak's not getting fired. He's not. He's
going to be the interim head coach. Is what he's going to be.
He's going to be saying, "Well, I'm just the advisor. The advisor never gets fired." Yeah. I just feel like if somebody brought me into the studio, "Hey, Drew, we want you to play these bass lines in this song." Okay, and then I look at the songs, and then they go, "You see that guy standing over in the corner? He's actually going to tell you the notation to play." What? Then why don't you just have him do it? What the fuck am I even doing here?
Yeah, I'm just unsettled. I mean,
Stefanski knows these players better than both Kubiak and Zimmer. That's the one thing I will say. He knows Cousins. He knows what he does well. He knows Diggs, Thielen. He knows how they run their routes. He knows Rudy. He knows the strong points of his tight end. He knows those players better than both those guys, so they better use that to their advantage. Kubiak doesn't know. Kubiak doesn't know how Thielen and Diggs run route. Kevin Stefanski knows that shit, so they better use it. Go ahead.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But the flip side of that argument, and I guess I'm just playing devil's advocate tonight. But the flip side of that argument is Kubiak or Cousins knows Kubiak's offense. I mean, he's very comfortable in it. And so I think if he kind of gets if they can get on the same page, they might be able to figure something out. I don't know. I'm just about the whole thing, man.
You know what, Ted? You got to feel a little bit better than DiFilippo was disconnected from Cousins. He came in and told Cousins. He came in, showed Cousins, this is what you're going to do. These are the plays you're going to run, and this is how you're going to do it. Kubiak came in here, and the first thing he did is sit Cousins down and go, "What do you like to do?"
Yeah,
that's a difference. That's getting on page with your quarterback.
Yeah.
There was a total disconnection between Flacco the Clown and Cousins. I don't think. What's the first game Stefanski was the coordinator after Flippo got fired? Was that Miami game?
Yeah,
they scored 3 touchdowns on the first 3 drives.
That was pretty great.
So,
but then the other 2 games they were terrible. I know. They couldn't get out of their own way against the Bears at home for a playoff spot on the line.
When you tear it all down, what David said, his fine speech, and let me tell you, that was very well said.
It's like you were watching.
It's my dream, baby. I want to live it.
Maybe it comes down when a lot of times you look at it. This is just another selling point for them to say, "All right, now we got it figured out every year. All right, this is what the problem was last year. All right, now we got Kubiak. Everything's going to be good." So,
and maybe that's my problem because every year they say, "Well, this is what we did wrong."
You have a right to be cautious.
And every year it's like, "Well, last year this is what happened that was wrong." and we fixed it. You know, last year it was, well, we needed a quarterback, so we got Cousins. The year before that, it was, I don't know what it was the year before. It was something. It was, all the injuries. And, well, now we're all healthy. And then, and then in 2015, it was, well, we lost our quarterback and it's every year it's something. And every year we go into training camp hearing that, well, we've got that, whatever that is, fixed. And it's like whack-a-mole. They get that fixed, and then something else pops up. And I don't know. I'm just frustrated, man. I'm just frustrated.
But as much as it's a soup sandwich on one side, you got to look at the pattern of what has worked good. And what has worked good since Zimmer's been there is the defense.
True. Very true.
The defense, since the moment he walked in the door, has gotten better and stayed better. That is the part of the team that has carried this team. If it wasn't for the defense over the last 5 years, we'd be below the Lions every year. So that is so they got that end of it figured out. And I think the offense has been. My question is, why does it take 5 or 6 years to address a poor offensive line? I mean, until we got Pat Elflein, the line has struggled. It just seems between Spielman and Zimmer, they never wanted to address it, or they thought it was good enough or something. But that's where the games are won and lost.
Well, like I said, I think Zimmer hates the offense. He doesn't want to deal with it.
But you have to build your line. You have to build your – you can't just – I mean, 3 years ago, we had the worst offensive line in football. I mean, we've gotten better at addressing the needs on it. And this year, it's looking a lot better than it has since Zimmer's – this is probably going to be Zimmer's best offensive line.
Well, I saw a poll on Twitter today was – what's more important to have on offense? A good offensive line or a great offensive line, good wide receivers, or a scheme?
I think scheme and offensive line. I mean,
yeah, I would really vote for those.
I think so, and you can go back and forth on either one, but you have to have the right players to run the scheme you want. If you have a bunch of 350-pound meat wagons,
then you want to
run a zone blocking scheme, well, then you're stupid. You want to run a power straight ahead, knock you in the mouth, road grader concept, whatever the heck they call it that day. I don't know, whatever.
It's power.
But
it's called power. Power run.
Yeah. So scheme and O-line is important, but you got to have the right people to be able to run the scheme you want too.
Well, the O-line was like at 66%. And then next came scheme and wide receivers, good wide receivers, was like at 3%.
Well, I think that's because we haven't had a good offensive line in so long that we're desperate for what we don't have.
Right.
And think that's the magic elixir. And so this year, when the line's good and the receivers are still good, what's going to be the thing that will say, oh, that's what the problem was? I mean, when they're 8-8 again this year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the being able to hang it on the offensive line. The offensive line has clearly been a problem. So it's been easy to. I mean, look at the pressures and everything the quarterback's under. If nobody has any more excuses left, it's Cousins. I mean, if they fix the O-line, he has two of the best wide receivers in football. He's got a great running back, a chunk yardage running back.
Yeah.
Got a decent tight end and a brand new one that should be good.
Yeah, he's got a brand new tight end that was ranked second in the country in college football. So I don't really know. He doesn't have any. The Vikings don't have any excuses.
All I know is I'm going to have to drink a lot this year.
Hey, that's going to make GMG and the Raw
Sackles, baby. That's Sackles.
I hate. If I were to watch this podcast and listen to me for the first time, I would not like me because I know I'm coming off as so negative. But I mean, and I don't know why, because there are so many good things to like about this team,
especially since your team just won the Stanley Cup. For God's sake,
well,
right? Play Gloria, baby. Play Gloria.
No.
Well, how old are you?
Who, me?
Ted? Yeah,
I will be 52. I'll be 52 next month in July.
I had to think about that.
If this appears on July 8th, I will be 52 in a week is what I'll be.
All right. I'm 55. How many seasons have we watched of Vikings when it's supposedly fixed?
All of them.
All of them. Our entire lives. All of them.
Every year
I'd buy it. Every year I'd buy it.
Those early 80s teams, we all know we were going to win one or two games. Come on now.
Well, fortunately, those were the years. That's when I moved to Columbus, we didn't have the internet. So I thankfully missed a lot of those years. So,
oh man, those were tough years.
Well,
but
for me, it was missing the late 70s when I was in New Hampshire. I was watching the Patriots every weekend.
So, Drew, you said earlier on paper, and I hate that term too, but you look at the roster of this football team, and I'm honestly trying to find a glaring weakness. I mean, people could say, well, the offensive line, but they fixed it. They got a stud in Garrett Bradbury. I think they're moving Pat Elflein to left guard, who I think is going to be, and he's healthy, and I think he's going to be better. I think the position switch, and now that he's healthy, he's going to be good.
And he's reported to have been beefed up and increased in strength from last year. The reporters, the beat writers have said the dude's huge.
And they got a very good, at least league average left tackle in Riley Reif. Josh Klein or Drew Samias were going to be the right guard, and that's whoever.
And if Klein reverts back to the way he played a couple years ago, we're going to be happy as shit.
Well, either way, it's an upgrade over Mike Remmers. Yes. And then they got a really young, promising guy in Brian O'Neill at right tackle. And you're thinking, I like it. On paper, I like this offensive line. On paper, I like Kirk Cousins. I like Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, this is something I mentioned to Dave last time we did that interview. We talked a couple weeks ago. If you look at the Vikings roster, if you go down it from last year and this year, last year, right at this time, everybody was saying, we were coming off that, NFC championship game. We're going to Super Bowl. We got a Super Bowl team. This year, we pretty much have the same team. But everybody's but I was asking Dave, how are people thinking it's 8-8 or 7-9 with the same guy? It's just like, it's a mind of how it shouldn't
be that way.
It's how a fan looks at things. It's how I look at things, because the 8-7-1, even though the roster is pretty much the same, has drawn us into this big cautionary, we're pessimistic about it. I am too, and I don't know. I mean, the way we're talking 8-8, 7-9 is like if we lost 12 guys. We haven't lost. We lost Sheldon Richardson on defense. Who else?
Or they had a complete coaching turnover and front office turnover, and none of that happened. And all the key guys thought we're probably going to walk due to salary concerns, like Kyle Rudolph or Everson Griffin are all back. And they re-signed.
Everybody's back.
We thought Anthony Barr was gone, and he came back in free agency. I mean, we shouldn't be this negative. Why are we this negative?
Yeah, why is that Super Bowl hype? Where was it from last year to this year? How come it's not happening right now?
I don't know.
Because we're not coming off of the season we had 2 years ago where we made the NFC Championship.
No.
That's the difference.
You know what? Zimmer has the horses. If we don't go to the playoffs, Zimmer should be fired the next day after the season ends.
And
he's not. Right. They have a really good. We got a good football team, and they should at least make the postseason. I mean, come on, man.
And think of the defense. These guys on the defense, all the starters, right? Shamar Stephen included, have all played together for at least 3 years, some of them up to 5.
Dude, that's unheard of in this day and age.
It's unbelievable in this day and age. And Zimmer, you were talking about one of the keys is that we have a good defense, right? And Chicago has a good defense, right? Green Bay, Lions, right? Well, that good defense.
Respect the process.
Yeah. That good defense. Every time there's a good defense, there's always regression the next year, right? That is the general trend in NFL history, right? It has been with some of the greatest defenses that have ever played. Zimmer, however, took a last place defense, put it in the top 10, right, the next year, and then we've been top 5 ever since. He's done that like 5 years in a row. That's unheard of.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, but we already know that. But we can't go 8-7-1 with a defense like that. I mean, you can't do it, dude.
No. It's got to be a whole team play.
It
We had discussed the whole wheel of blame on last season, but no, it shouldn't. It should be that good. We should go in and win 12 wins. That's what I'm predicting. An easy 12 wins.
You know what it is for me, maybe, now that we've been talking? It's
Hit us. Tell us, Tarasenko. What the hell is it?
Snipe. 5-hole. I think, honestly, it's the mental resiliency of this team last year. I would argue from Mike Zimmer on down. The locker room chemistry, I've said this before and I'll say it, I'll take it to my grave. There was a fracture in the locker room, and I don't know who caused it, and I'm not throwing stones, and I'm not saying it was anybody's fault, but the all-for-one mentality they had in 2017 when they rallied behind Case Keenum after Sam Bradford got hurt, and then after Dalvin Cook got hurt, that was one of the funnest teams that just put nobody first that I have ever watched of the Minnesota Vikings. And they didn't have that last year, and that led to this mental weakness, for lack of a better word. When it came time to put up or shut up in 2017, they put up. 9 times out of 10, they put up. And in 2018, they shut up, whether it was Kirk Cousins or whether it was the defense, because everybody blames Kirk Cousins for that last game against the Bears at home. But it wasn't Kirk Cousins that let a Mitchell Trubisky run offense run all over the Vikings defense for the better part of the entire second half and put the game away with 2 really long scoring drives. There was plenty of blame to go around for everybody last year. And if they can figure that out, go to the Grand Canyon, do some zip lining. But that's the key. I think that's the thing.
I think you're onto something there, because if you look at the roster and paper really has to change, it has to be something. Something happened whether it was the death of Sperano, whether Everson Griffin was a bigger part of that locker room than we thought, and he was gone all of a sudden. There wasn't that big brother, father figure walking around keeping people in line or whatever. We didn't have Greenway anymore, which was a big part of the locker room. Terrence Newman was a big part of the locker room.
Robeson.
Robeson, that's who I meant. Okay. All that was gone, and everything you just said, I have to agree with, because it's not we didn't lose 4 or 5 players on each side of the ball. We didn't. No. Something was disconnected, and something in that Bears game was dead, done, and stinking. Something didn't feel right
because they didn't come out.
The defense. That's right. The defense got ran over. You know what? It almost got to the point watching that game. I was talking to Man Bear and even watching with Ruby. Ruby's Ruby's really good to watch games with, because she doesn't get so psychotic as I do. She looks at things more rationally. We almost were saying those words you don't want to say about your team. It looks like we're quitting. You'd never want to say that. But that's what it felt like. It felt like we were cashing it in. You never want to see that.
And I think both sides of the ball did.
Yes. And so they need to get that back. They need to get whatever mojo that was in 2017 with Keenum. They got to get it back, and they got to make play. They got to get it back, whatever that is.
Yeah, but I think they have. When you have people like Anthony Barr,
you can't say they have.
How do we know?
When you got people like Anthony Barr that leaves millions on the table to say, "Hey, no, I want to stay here. This culture means so much." Or you have Rudolph, who could have sat pat and said, "Hey, I'm going off to a big payday." But no, he gets extended, goes for an extension, which we haven't gotten into, but it can only be, 2-3 years, and doesn't make a whole lot more money because he wants to be here. That to me shows that, hey, some of these fences and some of that disaster from last season may be mended, and we may be on the good side of that mental wellness divide.
It's too hard for me to say we have, though. I can't really. I got to side with kind of what Ted said about when the locker room gets fractured, a coach can't put it to get back together. Coaches can't do it. It becomes more divided. The locker room is together. The players run the locker room. And I don't know whether they need to – who's going to bring that back and get that back in there. But this is oftentimes when people overlook what veteran leadership's all about. Robeson, people say, oh, he wasn't – what was he to the team? He was huge to that part of the team.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Drew, the more you talk about Griff, I think – well, we talked about this last year. I think when he had his mental health problems last year,
right,
that affected everybody on that team to the core because he's one of their vocal leaders. He's one of the guys that gets everybody fired up, and he couldn't take care of himself for a while. And I just think when he did come back, he was there, but he wasn't there. I mean, he was obviously, and I'm not saying he wouldn't have been. Anybody would have been, but he was trying to get himself right. And when you're still working on yourself, you can't be there. You have to be there for yourself first. You can't always be there for your team.
Right.
Be that locker room leader that a guy like Brian Robeson or Terrence Newman could have stood up and said, "I've got this. We're good." By all accounts, Everson Griffin is back and he's happy. He's in a good place, and that is wonderful to hear. And I hope he's found a program or a medicine or whatever it is that keeps him on that good path, because that makes him a good person, a better person, and makes the Vikings a better team.
Exactly right. And he wasn't going to come back and walk in and say, "Hey, I'm the leader again." He wasn't. No, he wasn't in that. And unfortunately, he's not. It's not the position he probably wanted to be in. I didn't expect him to do that.
Right.
But I've watched the Vikings for 50 years, and I've never seen us be a 16-point favorite and lose by 3 touchdowns, and that's the week it happened. So that has to play together, because I've never seen us blow a game like that bad.
No, nobody was in
Griffin. Nobody.
With Griffin, from what we read, in a much better place, mentally, and the whole team mentally. We're going to end this episode on those happy notes. Drew, you got anything last things to say?
Man, Viking Cat. I want to see Jerry Burns on the zip line. It's my dream of my life now.
I want to get the audio. How about you, Ted?
Super Bowl, homeboy.
Yeah,
Super Bowl, absolutely.
Super Bowl or bust. Miami or bust.
Let's start blowing our balloons up so we can all